Welcome to Just Talking About Jesus. I'm Jan Johnson, a seasoned believer who loves relationships and, just talking about Jesus. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Just Talking About Jesus. I'm excited today to have Alicia Barr here. She was a small-town girl who did everything right. She married young, built a successful real estate career, prayed daily, but when her marriage fell apart, she became entangled in an affair that shattered her life. So get ready for an honest story of the wreckage of compromise. Oh, Alicia, you got a story to tell. So welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Jan. Thank you for having me.
Alicia, tell us a little bit about yourself and just who you are, where you live, what kind of things you do that in your daily life and whatever to get us started.
Yeah. Sure, absolutely. My pleasure. I am, like you said, just a small town girl with a big story to tell, a story that I never thought I would live, let alone share with the world. So here we are. And what the enemy intended for evil, God is using for good. He has taken the literal mess that I created with my own two hands and turned it into a message. And that's that you and I, everyone is worth more than a secret. We were created to be fully known and fully seen and fully loved, fearfully and wonderfully made, and according to the scripture. And so, which means that nobody's made to be number two, right? Nobody's made to be a secret or to be hidden. And so that's the message out of this mess. And I'm just humbled and honored to blaze the trail and share it, because as you'll discover, I'm sure as we get into conversation, there really wasn't anyone speaking from this point of view until now. And so, there's a great opportunity to shed a bright light in a very dark space on a topic that society at large, and I would say even maybe some churches say, shh, we ain't gonna talk about that, and what lives in the dark grows in the dark, Jan. So we're gonna shine a bright light and hopefully inspire a lot of hope and healing.
Yeah. I mean, that's just God's in the business of restoration.
Absolutely. And listen, I was raised right. I like to tell people I was raised on God, Garth, and straight. So it just sums it up, right? You got it all right here in small town USA. And I knew right from wrong. I really did. And I want your listeners to know that I take full ownership of the choices I've made, the actions I took, and the people I hurt. I don't take that lightly. I take full ownership of that. So I don't ever want to be perceived as a victim. And I think, we're human and we live in a fallen world, right? And so there were certainly some things that had transpired in my life, that one of which losing some very close friends, and then ultimately my entire church family as a result of that situation, in which I feel led me to a place of not realizing at the time, but being weak and vulnerable, being maybe searching subconsciously for a place to belong again. And I like to tell people, so when that happened with that church, it really left me in a place of, I don't think I got angry with God per se, but I was pretty much like, I can recall pretty much having the attitude of, God, is if this is what your people and your church are all about, I want nothing to do with it. Absolutely nothing to do with it. And so as a result of that church hurt, I think I just kind of went numb toward God. And then, temptation lured and it happened. And I look back and I'm just like, I was certainly in a weak place at the time, not even realizing it. And that's why I caution people today is like, be careful. 1 Corinthians 10:12 says, be careful what you judge, or you too could fall into the same sin. And I think at the time that, I said I was raised in church, strong foundation of faith, deep roots, loved Jesus, very involved in the church. I mean, I was so involved with that church after approximately 20 years that some people might have suspected I was on staff. That's how closely I worked with those leaders. And so for that church hurt to transpire and unfold the way it did, it wrecked me. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, and it made me question, how can I walk into another church where I don't know anybody? Are they going to do the harder right? Or are they going to take the easier out? And so it just left me with a lot of questions. It left me in a very volatile place. And unfortunately through that, I fell into a 4-year affair. That was a long intro. I'm sorry.
but your affair happened after your church hurt situation?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. A couple years later. And I think at the time, again, that 1 Corinthians 10:12 is like, looking back, I was arrogant, right? I mean, I was such a devout Christ follower. I was like, I think I probably just thought I was beyond beyond temptation. I was above that. And as we know now, I was not.
Yeah, I think too, sometimes one, it's hard in a small town. I live in a small town. Everybody knows, enough people know you. Not everybody knows you, but enough people know you.
Right, right, right.
Right. And there are only so many churches to
Yep.
be a part of, and when that's
Hmm.
something that you have expectations that that's probably just going to keep going because look how
Yeah.
great it is and look what I've done and whatever. Yeah, I know. I know. I know. And there is that element of there, but it's also, I think when God takes things away like that and cuts it off, it's like to move you in a completely different direction and to do something to your heart, correct?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you move out of your church, you're hurt, you're vulnerable. Now what?
Yeah, yeah. So it was about 2 years later, approximately. I wasn't really, my husband and I at the time had visited some other churches, but really never landed anywhere. And gosh, I think I realized looking back, coming out of high school, when you're from small town USA, what do you do, right? Especially if you're in a hurry to live the American dream, is you either go to college or you get married. And so I went to a local community college for a couple of years, but I mean, like I was still at home. So I got married. Like, that was the next step. And then you either have babies or you buy a property or you do both or, whatever. And so we bought a place. And I think I was really just in a hurry to live the American dream and rushed into that. I mean, I say rushed into it. We did 3 years of premarital counseling. But Jan, and so we were together a total of 11 years, but I can tell you that I've never shed a tear since the divorce. I've never shed a tear. So I think I thought I was in love. I think I was naive and young and had no idea. The marriage counselor hit the nail on the head when we were sitting in the counseling room there before the divorce, and he was like, I think y'all make great roommates. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, we do. He helps mow the yard sometimes. He cooks some food, and we don't ever fight. It's great, But that's not what I signed up for. So that was kind of our cue right there. And so about a year before, I want to be clear, I was still married when the affair began, but we were not that it makes it right. I'm not saying that, but we were pretty much living separate lives at that point. And so I never in a million years thought I would be there, but I crossed paths with the man with the affair, and we were doing a lot of life together, and there came a day that I didn't see it coming, but he reached over and touched my thigh, and the rest is history. I mean, and so it's just like, and it was fun. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, he took me to the moon and showed me all the stars. The first two, and I've committed to tell the truth, Jan. So not everybody's going to like this. I don't particularly like this. I mean, it was out of God's design for a relationship. And it was the most fun I've ever had in my life, those first 2 years of that affair. But here's the deal is sin is fun, right? Sin is enticing. Like, we don't talk about this enough in church, I don't think, is like, we wouldn't do it if it weren't. And so, we partook, and the first 2 years was just, again, the most fun years I've ever had in my life to date. I can sit here and say it still today. And I will also say sin is fun until it's not, because eventually it takes a toll. Or if you're not a Christ follower, it is fun until it's not. Because here's the deal, whether you're an atheist,
Right is right, and wrong is
that's
wrong.
right. Right. And it will eventually catch up and take a toll, because whether you're an atheist or whether you're a Christ follower, no human is made to be number two. No human's made to be a secret. No human's made to be hidden. And so 2 years into this affair, I have a rock bottom moment. Now be mindful, only he and I know, like we're doing life together in the light of day, but only he and I know about the affair. And he always told me that this was something we were going to take to our graves. But a person can only be degraded, belittled, and ditched so many times.
Mhm.
Consistently. And not because that's what he wanted. He didn't like it. He didn't want it to be that way. But because of the position I was in as the other woman or as the mistress, that was the reality. And again, I'm not looking for sympathy or empathy here. I was in the wrong. It's just the reality of the situation. And no
But
humans.
he was married too.
Yes. Yes. And he was also 30 years older than me. So that's another significant piece of this. Now, people would say, oh, he was older, he knew better. I knew better too. I want to take full ownership. I knew better too. Regardless, was it a power struggle? So we won't even go down that rabbit trail. A conversation for another day. But nonetheless, at that rock bottom moment, he always said this was something we were going to take to our graves. And so and this was something like I had came to care about, don't think I realized at the time that I was in love, but certainly looking back, no doubt, I didn't want to breach his confidence.
Mm.
And so he's telling me we're going to take this to our graves, and I'm feel like I'm dying a slow death behind the four walls of my home, when he's not here. And so I go searching in confidence for someone to relate to, not as a victim. I just wanted to find somebody that had been in my shoes. How did she not only break free from the toxicity of this relationship, but how did she ever learn to thrive again, not just survive? And Jan, I couldn't find it. I mean, to this day, my team, my publicity team, my publisher, nobody can find it until I released this book. And so that was that moment of just like, it's by the grace of God, literally, that I ever broke free, let alone that I'm now on my healing journey and learning to thrive again, because it was a very dark moment. I couldn't find anybody to, I felt convicted before I ever wrote this to tell the real, raw, and unfiltered version. And I started feeling nudged about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, that God was telling me that there's going to be purpose in the pain, and feeling called to serve the woman I used to be. And so in order to do that, I had to go back to that rock bottom moment and say, okay, what was I looking for? What did I need? I needed to feel seen, heard, understood, someone that could also understand what it's like to be torn between longing and loss, despite knowing right from wrong, and then the high highs, the low lows. And so I tell the real story. I mean, I tell it how it is. And I also like to tell people, you can't chase Jesus when you're living in sin. So I certainly was not chasing Jesus during this part of the story. And I'm telling you how it is, because I believe the woman I used to be, that woman that finds this resource today, that's what she's going to connect with. She's going to relate. And then obviously my story leads into my healing journey, but the affair continued for another 2 years. And I have to believe, if at that time I had found someone to connect with, someone that had been there and found her way out, that maybe it wouldn't have continued so much longer. But I tangibly did not know how. How do you walk away from someone that you care so deeply for, And so the affair continued for another 2 years.
I think there's an element of, just because of the age difference, there's an element of feeling maybe not on an equal par to be able to speak your heart, to really look, what's going on is not right, or doesn't feel right, or I feel trapped in it and I don't know how to get out, or that kind of a thing, to be able to really, because there is something to be said for an age difference.
Oh, yeah, I know. I appreciate your perspective on that. I will tell you that I held nothing back with him. So he very much knew. I mean, he knew the spiral, and I think he was experiencing it too. He often would say, we were very similar in personality, type A, dominant, go-getter, and so he was like, I've never had a problem in my entire life that I couldn't figure out a solution for until now. And he would just say, I can't afford to lose what I've worked for my whole life. And that's not so significant when you're in your late 20s and 30s, but when you're in your late 50s and early 60s, that statement's pretty significant. I mean, the weight of that thought process is pretty significant, and so that's why I think it's important to highlight the age difference. But we continued another 2 years, and then it was COVID year, and I was at a conference, a business conference for women, and in outskirts of Nashville, Tennessee, and a lady by the name of Annie F. Downs, you might be familiar, a podcaster, Christian author and podcaster, was on stage, and she was talking about social media, and I was pretty much checked out at the moment because I wasn't on social media at the time, never been a fan. And so I was kind of tuned out, just flipping through my workbook, and she said these 3 words, don't have secrets. I kind of glanced back down. She's talking about social media, right? And that's when she stops her entire speech, Jan, in front of 1,200 women in this church. And she says, the Holy Spirit is telling me right now that there's someone in this room that needs to hear me say, don't have secrets. And I'm not talking about on social media. I'm talking about in life. Yeah, tell me about it. My heart sank. And it's 3 simple words, right? Like, it's nothing I didn't know. But the fact that to me, a stranger on stage that doesn't know me from Adam, like, God just spoke through her to me, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. And so I look up, of course, anticipating that there's 2,400 eyes on me, and there's nobody. I mean, you could have heard a pin drop in that room at the moment. And I'll be honest, I left that conference, went to the Opryland Hotel, and got drunk. I mean, like, I I just needed to numb out. The weight of it was too much. But that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's when I ended the affair. And the next day, of course, I woke up and called him and told him. And I really don't think he believed me because I had been trying for so long to figure out how to break free. I don't think he believed me, but that was the end of the physical affair. Now, what made it hard was we lived in close proximity. And so for the next 3 years on my healing, as I began my healing journey, for the next 3 years, we passed on the road nearly every day, if not 15 times a day, which made it incredibly incredible. It was like the closest analogy I could come up with was it would be like a recovering alcoholic choosing to live next to a bar.
Yeah.
It was brutal, and yet this is the only place I've ever lived. It's my home. It's where I've always been. But that's how it felt. I mean, it was a brutal healing journey, and shoot, I'm still on my healing journey, but much further along than I was previously.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that would be really difficult. I guess from looking from the outside in, it's both people, I mean, it's both sides have a part in it, that he could have, knowing that you needed and wanted to get out of it, he could have said, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. And let's stop this too, so it's both sides. It's not just, you trying to get out and him knowing it or whatever, it's a.
Yeah. I often said, we would talk about it frequently, and it became like our only point of conversation. It felt like is how we were navigating this. But I would often say like on the days that he was regulated and seemed to be thinking logically, then I would be emotionally spiraling, can't do that. And then on the days that I was feeling pretty stable and regulated and thinking logically, he would be, emotionally spiraling. And so it was just like this. It's just like, it just felt impossible to let go. It just felt impossible to, and I understood like he didn't want to lose his family or his kids or his grandkids, and no more than I would want to lose anybody in my family to a relationship. And at the same time, then you would think, okay, two grown adults would say, okay, this is just not going to work, and we're gonna have to let go. But my goodness, it was never.
But like you say,
never that simple.
Yeah, but like you say, your heart thought it needed, and was seeking it in him instead of in him.
Yes, you're right. You are right about that.
Right.
Well, again, I wasn't chasing Jesus.
Yeah. And because it's, in the flesh, it's here in front of you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. Right. And it feels good, and it's comforting and it's warming. But then you have all the pain that comes with it, because that's not in God's design for us. Mm-hmm. We were never made to live that life.
Tell us about how your process of walking back to God. What were the things that God showed you that you could really grasp onto?
Sure. Yeah. So once I ended the affair after that conference, I sought out a counselor right away. Mm-hmm. And she really just set the foundation for my healing journey. She would tell me, she just drilled it into me. You are too wonderful to be anyone's secret. You're too wonderful to be his secret, which I think is rooted in the scripture of you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? Like she was using that from our first session on. And about 1.5 years later, she retired, and I thought I was going to be able to stand on my own 2 feet again. I thought I was doing pretty good. And about 6 months later, I'm like, holy cow, it felt like an 18-wheeler had hit me again. And it was grief, right? It was grief. It was the loss, and it was trying to navigate into, a healthier, like how to live in a new light, but in an old place that we were still sharing, essentially, not homes, but, general area location. And so I sought out and met a second counselor, and she just continued to build on that. My favorite definition of grief is that grief is the gap between what we thought would be and what really is. Mm-hmm. I think growing up, I often, and at no fault of anybody, but I always just paralleled grief with death. Mm-hmm. And it's so much more than that.
Absolutely.
Grief encompasses so much loss, whether it's divorce, whether it's incarceration for kids, whether it's, a parent incarcerated, whether it's a pet. I mean, grief can take on many forms, the loss of a relationship, the loss of an ability, right? And so I think there was a lot that I was grieving. Yeah. I mean, because we had done some work together, and so we were involved. Like the level of enmeshment with him, it wasn't just like he was my lover. Mm-hmm. I mean, he represented, if you think about it on like a bicycle wheel, all the spokes on a bicycle wheel, I mean, he represented a multitude of spokes. I mean, our lives were intertwined and entangled. And in extreme ways, so it wasn't like this was just somebody out of state that I just, he wasn't just a lover. He represented multiple facets. And so I think I was grieving the loss of a lot of different things, not just, that relationship. And I was determined, I mean, of course, we lived in the same area, so I was determined to hold on as neighbors and as friends with a death grip, even beyond ending the physical affair. Now, ultimately, they ended up moving out of state and such, but it was a long journey before that happened. But when I was in counseling, to answer your question, I told my second counselor, her name's Rachel Long. She founded Joshua Center, which is a grief center for kids. Thankfully, they don't turn away adults. But I told her when I went in there, I said, listen, I was raised on a foundation of faith. Like, I've always loved Jesus, and it's time for me to come back. And this, I obviously told her my story and the church hurt that had transpired and how I kind of went numb to God. And so I asked her to include the spiritual side and scriptures as she counseled me through that journey. And so it was a long, slow process, but that I like to tell people that it's like, I'd always heard growing up, because I was going to church right out of the womb. So like, I always heard from the pulpit, you hear about forgiveness and grace and mercy, and you sing about it. But Jan, I don't think I'd ever really like fully experienced it until I came out of this situation. And once you've experienced it, it's just like, it's hard to articulate, right?
It is. And I think but over and over, I've just seen over and over my own life and other people's as well. It's like, if you're never in a hard place, first of all, and there's some people that say, well, I don't really have a testimony. I didn't have horrible things happen to me. I mean, that doesn't mean God isn't working in your life. But when you have hard things, whether it's your own making or whether it's by health or whatever else that comes your way that you didn't expect or whatever like that, that's the times where now you understand grace and you understand mercy and you understand his forgiveness and you understand his redemption, and that he died on the cross because he loved you.
Yeah. Well, and Rachel would say that in counseling. Listen, nobody will ever be harder on me than me. Like, I've always just been an entrepreneur, go-getter, and just super hard on myself, high expectations. And that was one of the things that really killed me with the situation, is that integrity has always been one of my core values. I even to the point that I told him, I was like, if anybody ever asks, including your wife, the cat's out of the bag. But somehow, in some jacked up way, I justified living the lie. And that just eats me alive. With that said, there would be times I would go into the counseling room and I would make a comment maybe about myself, or just, oh, she made her bed, she's got to lay in it, I guess that's me now, and Rachel she would about fall out of her chair, my counselor. She would be like, and she would turn the table and she would be like, because she knows I love and adore my nieces and nephews, and she'd be like, is that what you would say to your niece? Like, you made your bed, you get to lay in it now? Like, is that how you would treat a child? I'm like, well, no, of course not. And she's like, you're a child of God. I'm a child of God. So I'm growing in this lane, Jan. I mean, I am. Female empathy wasn't, just not something I experienced a lot. We're just strong. We're just independent. We just push through. We just, so I've never really offered myself a lot of empathy and grace, but I'm certainly growing in that area, because I do realize, like, I am a child of God, and that's not how my Heavenly Father talks to me, nor is that how I would talk to any child on this earth. So why am I talking to myself that way, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
And just,
I mean, fortunately for you, you found a wonderful Christian counselor. That's hard, and in a small town. That's not.
I did have to go to a little bit larger town, but we did find her.
But not always easy to find. Praise God that happened in your life, to have somebody to guide you along that way too, because it takes somebody else to be able to. You get myopic. You're only looking at your situation where you're in, and when you're enmeshed in or whatever, you don't see outside. You need somebody else to be speaking truth into you, especially at that point when you're ready to listen.
That's right. If somebody had handed me these resources in the first 2 years, I'd have been like, okay, so it's fun until it's not. I'm having fun right now, but when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's eventually going to catch up. And when it takes a toll, that's when you're ready for change. And that's when your ears open. Sometimes you still can't see the forest for the trees, right? I mean, but that's where, like you said, the Bible says, seek wise counsel.
Mhm.
And that's what my first counselor and ultimately Rachel did for me.
Yeah, yeah. So what is it that you throughout this really have learned that you want women or men really to learn from this situation?
Yeah, you are worth more than a secret. There is nothing. This is what, and this is the other thing that Rachel would tell me is like, whether it's something I was being hard on myself about, or maybe just the affair, all the lies, that the domino effect of lies to protect the original big, fall, was that's what Jesus went to the cross for. Like, it's done. You're already forgiven. You don't have to carry shame and guilt.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dr. Michael Slepian from Columbia University. He wrote a book called Secret Life of Secrets. And in that, he shares about a survey he conducted of 50,000 people. And he learned that on average, they carried 13 secrets each, 5 of which they had never spoken out loud, which tells me that whether it's at your church, whether it's at a conference, whether it's, no matter a restaurant, there's somebody in that room
Yeah.
that's carrying something, that's living under the burden of shame and guilt and stuck in the bondage of secrecy. And so this is so much broader. Sure, my fall, my secret was an extramarital affair. The secret can take on many different forms and faces, right? The secret could be different. You may not relate to my story, but the consequences or the side effects of living in the bondage of secrecy are parallel. Living under the burden of shame and guilt is universal. You know
Mhm.
what I'm saying? And so, sure, I felt called to serve the woman I used to be, to lay my story on the table. But what's been incredible to see what God's doing with this story is that people are connecting, even if they haven't been in my particular situation, because they've lived in the bondage of secrecy, or they've carried so much shame and guilt that they were too scared to tell anyone. And I think just going first and saying, y'all, it's time to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. It's what Jesus went to the cross for. You're already forgiven. And he already knows. He's called us to live an abundant life.
Yeah.
And I don't believe an abundant life involves secrecy,
Right.
And so you are worth more than a secret. I am worth more than a secret. You're made to be fully known, fully loved, fully and wonderfully made. Like, live in that.
Yeah.
Live in that and unleash, remove the burden, trade in the shame and guilt for the forgiveness, grace, and freedom that's found in Jesus.
Tell us about your book. What's the title of the book, where people could find it? And
Yeah, the book is called More Than a Secret: How a Mistress Broke Free from Her Affair, and it's available everywhere books are sold. You can also visit aliciabarr.com to connect with us, to opt in for ongoing news updates and letters, and our social media handles are there. So everything is there. But there's also an Audible version that I'm super excited about, because Rachel, my most recent counselor and pastor and now dear friend, actually went into the recording studio with me, and we recorded conversation pieces around every chapter. And so there's some behind the scenes and just additional information and explanation for every chapter of More Than a Secret on the Audible version as well.
yeah. Oh, that sounds wonderful. That addition would be great. Great to be able to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've recorded audio as well, so I know, I know, I know that whole picture.
Sure. Yeah. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do
Mhm.
that with her, and to be able to just it was kind of a mark on the page of like, look how far we've come, and how the work God's done, in the last
Exactly.
several years, to go from the rock bottom moment to now there's a resource for the world, for the woman I used to be, that will outlive me, that's there
Right.
until Jesus comes back. Yeah.
Right. And yeah. And the fact that God's called you to do that, and put you in a place
Yeah.
where you can, because now you are free, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
now you are free, and you're a role model for other people to be able to see that, and to go, "Oh, well, it worked for Alicia. It's going to work for me, one step at
Yeah.
a time. Yeah, we can do this. Yeah.
I like to call it the harder right. The harder right. It's not always easy. It will be hard. Healing is hard, but it's the only thing that offers you a future.
Right. Yeah. So good. All right. Alicia, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for sharing your time with me and our audience. And I can't wait to put this out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jan.
You bet. Friends, I just want to say that which one of us has not sinned? Which one of us has not seen something that looked like it was going to be fun maybe, and led us down the wrong direction. I mean, that's how Satan lures us in, doesn't he? He just says, this is, makes everything look like the light when it really isn't. Same thing happened to Adam and Eve, right? Whatever you have done or faced or have held secret, it's not a secret to Jesus because he knows your heart. He knows you intimately and he loves you totally and completely and is right there ready to forgive you for whatever that situation is. So go to him if you haven't yet and expose those secrets, bring it out. Some of those things feel like they're so difficult, whatever. I was raped, it took me many, 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 many years to be able to talk about that. But once I did, first time was hard. Second time, not so much, because the people that I was sharing with were like, there for me, they weren't judging me. They were there for me. And I think any of your secrets, even, having an affair, yeah, ugly stuff, but is it your human heart and that draws you in there? And sometimes we just need to be vulnerable. So I'm going to just ask you to pray about those things and see where it leads you, that there's someone that you could at least share with and not have that just hidden forever, which isn't doing you any good. All right. Thanks for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Friends, I just want to say that which one of us has not sinned? Which one of us has not seen something that looked like it was going to be fun? Maybe, and led us down the wrong direction. I mean, that's how Satan lures us in, doesn't he? He just says, this is, makes everything look like the light when it really isn't. Same thing happened to Adam and Eve, right? Whatever you have done or faced or have held secret, it's not a secret to Jesus because he knows your heart. He knows you intimately and he loves you totally and completely and is right there ready to forgive you for whatever that situation is. So go to him if you haven't yet and expose those secrets, bring it out. Some of those things feel like they're so difficult, whatever. I was raped, it took me many, 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 many years to be able to talk about that. But once I did, first time was hard. Second time, not so much, because the people that I was sharing with were like, there for me, they weren't judging me. They were there for me. And I think any of your secrets, even, having an affair, yeah, ugly stuff, but is it your human heart and that draws you in there? And sometimes we just need to be vulnerable. So I'm going to just ask you to pray about those things and see where it leads you, that there's someone that you could at least share with and not have that just hidden forever, which isn't doing you any good. All right. Thanks for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again next time. Have you been able to look at some of the Substack newsletters that I've sent out?
I have.
What do you think?
I love it. It gives you just enough information that I'm just chomping at the bit to hear I want the whole podcast. I love the information on there. It just gives a little bit more of, oh, okay, that's what this is going to be about.
Yeah. And it's a pretty quick read.
Oh, it's totally quick. It's an easy read, which is helpful, again, in the fast pace we live in.
Yeah. And the links are in there as well. And so it's shareable and whatever. So yeah, if you haven't tried that out, all right, give it a try.